Have you ever had a conversation that changed the way you see someone, or even yourself? You know, those moments where a few simple words, spoken by someone you least expect, just stick with you, lingering in your mind long after the encounter ends. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when my daughter's boyfriend sat across from me in a little cafe one rainy afternoon. Before I get into the details, I'd love to know where you're watching us from. Drop your city in the comments below. I'm always curious to see where all our viewers are joining from. And hey, if you like stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support means so much. Alright, let's dive into the story. It was just a regular Tuesday, or so I thought. The weather was dreary, rain tapping softly against the windows as I sat at my favorite corner table in the cafe, sipping my coffee. I loved coming here. It was quiet, cozy, and the smell of fresh pastries always made everything feel a little better, even on days when nothing seemed to be going right. That afternoon, I'd been planning to meet a friend, but she had canceled last minute, so I ended up just sitting there, letting my thoughts wander as I watched the world go by. That's when I saw him, Ellie, my daughter's boyfriend. He was standing by the counter, looking a little awkward, scanning the room for someone. I wasn't expecting to see him there. Usually, he was with my daughter, but today he was alone. When he spotted me, his face brightened, and he made his way over. "Hey, Mrs. Collins," he said, his voice warm but with that shy undertone I always noticed in him. "Is this seat taken?" I motioned to the empty chair across from me, smiling. "Not at all. Join me." He slid into the seat, and for a moment, we both just sat there, not really saying anything. It was one of those quiet moments where you're not sure if you should speak or just let the silence hang. Ellie had always been polite, but not particularly talkative around me. He mostly kept to himself, keeping the conversation light, talking about school or my daughter. So when he finally spoke, I wasn't expecting the depth of what he said. "I'm really glad we're getting a chance to talk," Ellie said suddenly, his eyes meeting mine with a level of sincerity that caught me off guard. "I've been meaning to say something to you." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's on your mind?" He hesitated, fidgeting with his coffee cup. I wanted you to know how much I appreciate you. You've been so kind to me, and I know I don't always show it, but I'm really grateful." There was something in his voice, something raw, vulnerable, that made my heart soften. I didn't know what had brought on this honesty, but it was like a door had opened between us. Maybe it was the quiet cafe, or maybe it was the way the rain outside made everything feel more intimate, but in that moment I understood something about him I hadn't before. It wasn't just politeness or obligation. It was real. He genuinely appreciated me. The words hung in the air, unexpected but comforting. And for the first time, I realized how much I had misjudged him, how much more there was to him than just the boy who dated my daughter. He wasn't just some guy. I could see there was a depth to him, a kindness I hadn't fully recognized. I took a deep breath, letting the moment settle in, and looked at him carefully. "I'm glad to hear that, Ellie. I think you're a great guy. You've been good to her, and that means a lot to me." And just like that, something shifted. The conversation didn't feel forced anymore. There was no awkwardness between us. He wasn't just my daughter's boyfriend. He was a young man who, in this small moment, had opened up to me in a way I hadn't expected. I had no idea then that this conversation would stay with me for days, maybe even longer. But I did know that, in that simple exchange, something in me had changed. After that day in the cafe, Ellie's words kept echoing in my mind. It wasn't just the fact that he had said something so thoughtful. It was the way he said it. There was no pretension, no hidden agenda. It was just raw, genuine emotion. And for some reason, it made me reflect on my own life in a way I hadn't in a long time. The next time I saw him, it was a few days later. I was at my daughter's house, helping her with some household chores, when Ellie walked in. He was holding a bag of groceries, his usual easy smile lighting up his face when he saw me. But this time I saw him differently, more than just a young man who was good enough for my daughter. I saw the layers, the kindness, the maturity behind those brown eyes that I had overlooked before. "Hey, Mrs. Collins," Ellie greeted me casually, his voice warm, but I noticed a softness in it that hadn't been there before. "Got everything you need?" I smiled, nodding. "Looks like it. Thanks for bringing the groceries. You didn't have to." He shrugged, setting the bag down on the kitchen counter. "I wanted to. Besides, I know you're always helping out with something." He glanced at my daughter, who was busy in the other room, then back to me. "I think it's great what you do for her." His words felt like a continuation of that conversation from the café, as if we were building some unspoken connection. I couldn't help but feel a little more at ease around him now. Something about his presence made me think there was more to life than the usual worries and routines I'd gotten so accustomed to. There was something refreshing about him, a perspective I hadn't considered before. As the afternoon wore on, we all sat down for dinner, the conversation flowing effortlessly. My daughter and Ellie were talking about their plans for the weekend, but I noticed how Ellie kept checking in with me, asking questions about my life, my interests, almost like he wanted to understand who I was beyond just being his girlfriend's mom. Later, after dinner, we sat on the porch for a while, the air cool and crisp from the evening breeze. It was one of those quiet moments when the world feels like it slows down and you can just breathe. I was sitting there, sipping my tea, when Ellie joined me on the porch swing. He sat down beside me, his posture a little more relaxed than usual. "You know," he said softly, his voice quieter now, "I really admire how you live your life. You're so grounded, so sure of who you are. I've always looked up to that." I blinked, taken aback. "Grounded? Sure of who I am?" He nodded, looking out at the fading sunset. "Yeah, you just have this calm about you. Like, no matter what happens, you're always going to be okay. I don't know. It's something I think about a lot, actually." I sat there for a moment, trying to process what he'd said. It wasn't just a compliment. It felt like a recognition, something deeper. I had spent years running around, trying to do everything perfectly, worrying about things I couldn't control, and yet here was this young man, seeing me in a way I hadn't seen myself in years. It made me feel both proud and vulnerable at the same time. "You've got it all figured out," he added, a little shy now. "I want to be like you someday." I didn't know what to say to that. "You're on your way, Ellie. Just keep being you." It was strange. In some ways, I felt like he was the one teaching me something, not about being perfect, but about being real. His words weren't just flattery. They were a reminder that sometimes we all need to stop and see ourselves through someone else's eyes. Ellie had this ability to make me feel seen in a way I hadn't expected, and it made me feel a little less alone in the world. As the evening turned to night, the sound of crickets filled the air, and we talked a little more, sharing stories and laughter. By the time Ellie left, I was left with a sense of peace, a quiet understanding between us that I hadn't realized I needed. But as I sat there alone on the porch, the stars beginning to twinkle above, I couldn't help but reflect on how unexpected life could be. Just when you think you know everything about the people closest to you, a simple conversation can change it all. The days that followed were like a quiet unfolding of something I couldn't quite explain. Every time I saw Ellie, there was a little shift between us. It wasn't obvious to anyone else, but I felt it. It wasn't that we became best friends or that we started sharing secrets. No, it was subtler than that. There was a new kind of respect, a mutual understanding that didn't need words. One Sunday afternoon, my daughter invited me to a family BBQ at their place. Ellie was there, of course, helping my husband with the grill, laughing and joking with my daughter's cousins. I noticed something different about him that day. He seemed more at ease, more present in the moment. I had to admit, it made me curious. It wasn't just his usual polite demeanor. There was a lightness in him now, a comfort that hadn't been there before. I was sitting at the picnic table, nursing a glass of lemonade, when Ellie walked over, wiping his hands on his apron. He looked at me for a moment, then sat down beside me, casually leaning back in his chair. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, smiling in that quiet way of his. "Not at all," I replied, smiling back, "just taking a break from all the noise." "Yeah, it's a lot sometimes, huh?" Ellie chuckled, glancing around at the crowd of people laughing and chatting around us. "But it's nice. Everyone's happy." "It is," I agreed, nodding. "Family gatherings like this always remind me how lucky I am." He looked thoughtful for a moment, and then, just like that, he surprised me again. "You know, I've been thinking about something lately, about how lucky I am too." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why is that?" "Well," he began, his voice a little hesitant, "I've never had a family like yours. I mean, my parents are good, but it's different, you know. Your family, they make me feel like I belong. Like, it's not just because I'm dating your daughter. It's like they really see me." I blinked, feeling my heart tug at his words. I hadn't known Ellie felt that way. It wasn't something he'd ever shared with me before, and hearing it now made me realize how much of a difference small gestures can make. The warmth, the small acts of kindness that go unnoticed. They were things that Ellie clearly valued, things that I had taken for granted. "You fit in just fine, Ellie," I said softly, trying to steady the unexpected emotion that swelled inside me. "You've always been part of the family." He smiled, but there was something different in the way he looked at me now, more than just the gratitude I'd noticed before. It was a kind of understanding, an acknowledgement that we had both grown a little in the short time we'd known each other. Maybe I wasn't the only one learning from this relationship. For a while, we sat in silence, just watching the others, the sun beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over everything. It was one of those moments that felt timeless, like everything had settled into place for just a little while. As the evening went on, I found myself watching Ellie in a new light. He wasn't the same shy young man who had first entered our lives. There was something deeper now, something I hadn't expected. He was still figuring things out, but I could see the foundation of someone with a good heart, someone who respected people and knew how to appreciate what really mattered. When it was time to leave, I stood up, gathering my things, and Ellie came over to say goodbye. "Thanks for everything," he said, looking at me with those same sincere eyes. "Really, it means a lot." I nodded, smiling. "Take care, Ellie. We'll see you soon." As I drove home that evening, I thought about how far we'd come, the unspoken bond that had quietly formed between us. It wasn't just about being polite or respecting boundaries anymore. It was deeper, more personal. It was about understanding each other without needing to explain everything. And for the first time, I realized that my relationship with Ellie wasn't just about him being my daughter's boyfriend. It was about two people, two very different people, connecting in a way that I hadn't thought was possible. As the weeks went by, I found myself thinking about Ellie more than I expected. It wasn't just the conversations we'd had, but how they had opened my eyes to something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. There was an ease now, a quiet understanding between us that felt like it had always been there, but had just been waiting for the right moment to surface. One chilly Saturday morning, I was at the café again, the familiar hum of the place comforting as I sipped my coffee. The weather had turned colder, and the rain was falling in steady sheets outside. I had just settled into my favorite corner when, to my surprise, Ellie walked in alone. He scanned the room for a moment, then spotted me and waved. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, already pulling up a chair across from me. "Of course not," I said, smiling. "What brings you here today?" He shrugged, sitting down and pulling off his jacket. Just needed to get out of the house for a bit. Thought I'd grab a coffee and clear my head. I could tell something was on his mind, but I didn't push. Instead, I let him sit quietly for a moment, the sound of the rain filling the space between us. We didn't speak for a few minutes, and I could tell he was gathering his thoughts, figuring out how to start whatever it was he needed to say. Finally, Ellie broke the silence. "I've been thinking about a lot of stuff recently," he said, his voice a little more serious than usual. "Yeah," I prompted gently, leaning forward. "What about?" "About life, I guess. About the future." He paused, looking out the window, his gaze distant for a moment. "And about how people see you." I tilted my head slightly, waiting for him to continue. "I think about what you said a while back about being grounded," he went on, his voice quieter now. "And I don't know. I feel like I've spent so much time trying to fit in with the world around me, trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be, that I haven't really taken the time to figure out who I am." His words hit me harder than I expected. There was something raw in his voice, a vulnerability that reminded me so much of myself when I was his age. The uncertainty, the search for meaning, for identity. It was something we all went through, just in different ways. "I get it," I said softly, my voice full of understanding. "It's easy to get caught up in what others expect of you. But the truth is, Ellie, you can't really know who you are until you take the time to be with yourself, to listen to your own thoughts. You don't need to rush to figure it all out." He nodded slowly, the weight of my words clearly settling in. "I guess that's what I'm trying to do now. Not just for me, but for her, my relationship with Sarah. I don't want to mess it up, you know." I smiled gently, my heart swelling with a quiet pride. "I can see that. You care about her, and that's important. But remember, Ellie, no relationship is perfect. It's about learning, growing together, and respecting each other. And the same goes for you, too. You don't need to have it all figured out to make things work." For the first time since we'd started talking, I saw a shift in his expression, his shoulders relaxed, his face softening. He wasn't looking for validation anymore. He was beginning to understand something deeper about himself, about life, and about the people around him. We sat there for a while longer, sipping our coffee and letting the quiet conversation flow. I realized that, in a strange way, we had both been teaching each other something. Ellie had reminded me of the importance of slowing down, of looking at the world through a different lens, and I had hopefully given him a little perspective on his own journey. When it was time to leave, Ellie stood up and offered me a small, sincere smile. "Thanks for this," he said, his voice warm. "I really needed it." I smiled back. "Anytime, Ellie."